Hello everyone and welcome to the Liverpool Daily News stream. I'm Tom Greaves and I'm joined by Matt Addison to discuss the latest Liverpool news and rumours. Be sure to get your comments in as we go and we'll try to get to as many interesting points as we can. Matt, Kylian Mbappe is linked to Liverpool yet again under a very strange set of circumstances, it's fair to say. What were your initial thoughts when you saw these stories floating around?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I've seen we got a couple of comments coming in already going, why are we talking about this? But it is a big story. It's come from a big source in Spain who suggest essentially that Liverpool are the only option for him. It seems pretty likely that he wants to leave PSG. I think that was probably inevitable, to be honest, when we kind of saw the things that he was being promised in the summer. They gave him a massive new contract. They gave him a lot of power. If you believe some of the things that you read, essentially, the powers of a sporting director or a manager, it got to that sort of ridiculous level of things, really, with kind of what was being said. But the suggestion is that he wants to leave in January. He's not happy, and PSG don't want to sell him to Real Madrid. So it kind of feels a bit like a process of elimination of, well, who else has been interested in him in the past? Who else possibly might be able to afford him? I'm not necessarily sure that Liverpool can. I also think that Liverpool, if they are going to spend a huge amount of money in 2023, it should probably not be on another forward. It should be on a midfielder. Obviously, we all know the name Jude Bellingham that Liverpool are interested in. And yeah, it kind of feels like one where you can see a world in which it might possibly feasibly be the case, but I still think inevitably he will end up at Real Madrid. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, but that's kind of why we're talking about it, isn't it? There's an interest there. Liverpool have been in for him in the past. He said himself in the summer before he signed the contract with PSG that he had talks with Liverpool and with Jurgen Klopp about whether it was possible. Obviously, ultimately, they've decided it wasn't. The fact that he's on, I think, £500,000-600,000 a week at PSG, if he was ever going to come to Liverpool, that would have to instantly sort of halve or pretty much, halve for that to be realistic. So, look, it is what it is. Do I think Liverpool are going to sign Kylian Mbappe? Probably not, but the links are there. The rumours are strong. And I think as much as anything, what we can take from it really is the fact that Liverpool are being talked in Spain as a realistic rival for Real Madrid, I think is probably, a decent thing. They've dropped off a cliff performance-wise this season, but they are still very much seen, at least, as being one of the best teams in the world. So, yeah, plenty of positives, but will it happen? Probably not.
It's interesting that the reports actually come out of Spain as well, because that's obviously where Real Madrid are from. Whether that's any kind of whether that's linked to any kind of way for them to try and manipulate Real Madrid into making a move or PSG into selling to them, I don't know.
It's one of those where it's come from Spain. And obviously, the interesting thing for me, I think, with all of this really is sort of, the plan for him. The only way that I think it could possibly be feasible is if Liverpool just accepted that they were only going to have him for a couple of years and then he was going to go to Real Madrid. I think if you could sort of position it so that you knew almost a little bit, I think, like what City have done with Erling Haaland, is that they've got this apparent release clause that comes in a couple of years' time. They've spent all this money on him, but they'll have him for a couple of years, win everything in that time, and then sell him on for a bit of a profit in terms of the transfer fee. But obviously that then can help them pay back all the wages and all the rest of it. So there's a way in which it possibly could financially work, and I think Liverpool should explore it. But, ultimately the numbers might just be so big, and they certainly were so big in the summer that it just wasn't realistic. So whether that's
him recently signing a new contract effectively just puts the nail in the coffin for Liverpool. I mean, we're not big spenders. We're just not. It's not how we do business. So I'd imagine both his price tag and his wages are just going to be astronomically out of Liverpool's price range.
Yeah, you'd think the wages would be an instant turn off, to be honest. I think that the transfer fee would be enormous as well. I mean, I think Real Madrid had a bid in the summer of 150, 160 million that was turned down, and it's going to take an enormous amount of money, isn't it? So, yeah, it's one of those where it would be almost impossible to see it happening. But like I say, if you could find a way of doing it so that you just agreed and accepted from the start that he was only going to be there short term, it was just, an opportunity for him to try Liverpool, try the Premier League, and then move on. maybe it could be a possibility, but even then, I think there's other question marks. I think Jamie Carragher was talking about it last night of kind of, would he fit in with what Liverpool do? There was that clip a few weeks ago where he was on a counter-attack and I think Neymar or Messi didn't pass the ball to him, so he just stopped running. Things like that, not going to fly at Liverpool, are they? So, yeah, there's a few different bits to it, but yeah, it's unlikely, but hopefully it's a sign really of Liverpool being in for these big names. We know that they either spend nothing or they go and spend a lot. So, yeah, the fact that they're in for him, hypothetically, is, I suppose, a good sign.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But right, moving on to Rangers now then, Jim will be happy to see. And even with Liverpool's growing injury list, should still be 3 points to Liverpool, do you think?
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, they were really not very impressive last week. I think we spoke in the build-up to that one. I was reluctant to kind of go too harsh in on them. I think we called them a kind of lower Premier League team, and I think that's possibly been a little bit generous, having seen them at Anfield. I think at home for them at Ibrox, I think it will be a different game. I think the atmosphere will be different. Obviously, they'll know that if they can get the first goal, that completely changes it. And the way that Liverpool have been performing lately and the way that Liverpool have been starting games and conceding the first goal, there is certainly a possibility of that being the case. That's really the one thing that I don't want, really, is Liverpool to concede in the first 10 minutes, which they seem to have a habit of doing at the moment. I think what you just want is a proper away from home, difficult European game performance where you just sit there, keep the ball for a bit, try and quieten the crowd for the first 10. If Liverpool get through the first 10 and it's 0-0, I think they'll go on and win it fairly comfortably. But yeah, if they give Rangers any sort of sniff of a goal or just even give them a couple of chances, we know what's going to happen. We know what the crowd can do, and suddenly it can become very difficult for Liverpool. So yeah, fingers crossed, not just for this game, but just generally, really. I think for Liverpool just to have a sensible, boring 10 minutes to start off a game, that would be very welcome.
It's a crazy thing to say that, isn't it? How all we'll be happy with now is just get through the first 10, because we've just been conceding first in every single game. Do you think it's important for us to just actually get our noses in front in this one for once, just so we can actually? You mentioned the crowd; it is going to be like a bear pit. Like, the atmosphere there is unbelievable, especially with them in the Champions League. I think if they lose this game as well, they're like effectively gone. So, yeah, as you say, the first 10 or 15 minutes of this game are going to be huge.
I think this is one as well that they look at all of their home games, but I think particularly the way Liverpool are playing, even what happened last week, I think they'll sense a bit of an opportunity. If they can get one, then maybe they've just got something to cling to. And we've seen that with Rangers and with Celtic. They're not at the same level as some of the big teams, but they can just get themselves a goal and cling on, and the crowd will help them, and they'll sit in and defend and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game, but it should be one that Liverpool have got enough sort of nous about them to be able to get through. I think in any other run of form, any other kind of position that Liverpool found themselves in over the last few years, you'd fancy them to go there and just wipe the floor with them, really. It's only really because Liverpool are just nowhere near their best at the moment that there's a little bit of concern. There is, a complete difference in quality, but it's almost a bit like if you get a championship team away in the FA Cup or something, and you have to go to, a Middlesbrough, or you have to go to a team like that, and it's difficult, but ultimately the quality should tell. And I think it's similar really for Liverpool in this game. If they perform, if they do well, they can put themselves out of sight with half an hour left, and if they can do that and maybe get Thiago off or get one or two players off with Manchester City and the weekend in mind, that would be ideal. But yeah, first things first, let's try and get a goal first in the game, try and get that second one and try and kill it. But yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah, just before we go, I wanted to touch on Diogo Jota. He was asked yesterday in his press conference if he'll be starting to adopt a more regular role on the left, following obviously Diaz getting injured. He says obviously that he's ready for any challenge, but could you see Fabio Carvalho having something to say about that? Do you think he could actually do a job on the left? We saw him in the front line a couple of weeks ago at Anfield. Was it the Brighton one? Yeah,
I think it was Brighton, wasn't it? He came off at half time in that one and didn't really have a great impact in the game. I think if we do see Carvalho, I'd rather see him as the 10. I think that's the position that we've seen him best in for Fulham last season. I think if Liverpool are playing 4-2-3-1, I think that's probably a position that he thinks he can make the most impact in. I think Diogo Jota is going to play a lot off the left. Obviously, they're going to have to find other options. You can't play every minute of every game over the next few weeks. But yeah, I think Diogo Jota will be the obvious one. I think we will see a bit of Carvalho there, even if I'd rather see him kind of just, off Nunez or possibly in conjunction with maybe Firmino in there. I know obviously Firmino wants to play that 10 as well, but I think you could maybe play the both of them. I think there's a few sort of selection issues for Liverpool to think about. I think Curtis Jones coming back, I know he's not back just yet, but he'll hopefully be back at some point. I think the 4-2-3-1 could really suit him as well, not as the 2, but slightly further forward, whether that's off the left or as the 10. I think that could be a big thing for him. And yeah, there's a few sort of positions really that a couple of those players can play in. Harvey Elliott, I'd be interested to see what he could do as a 10 as well. I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I think we might see Fabio Carvalho tonight, but I don't think it'll be from the start. I think Liverpool will go pretty much similar to what they'll play against City at the weekend. But hopefully, like I said before, if they can get themselves, a goal or two, maybe they can make 1 or 2 changes, say 60, 65 minutes in.
Yeah, I think if we are going to experiment on any kind of different position changes or having different players come into the squad, it would be against Rangers tonight. I think as much as it is an important game, I think Liverpool do have a little bit of wiggle room for experimentation against them. As much as the atmosphere is going to be, if we can get ahead, then we've probably got a little bit of time to play around, because I think the crowd will go flat and we can potentially sit back and do what we want. But I think we'll leave it there anyway. Keep across all the Blood Red channels for the news later on. The game's at 8 o'clock, and we will be covering all that extensively afterwards. Thanks for joining us on the stream, and thanks for getting involved in the comments as well.